This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like needing the protection of an offensive guard on the football field, but getting an elementary school crossing guard. Sure, they're both guards, but you can only trust one to keep your quarterback safe when the game is on the line. So don't settle for just any insurance when there's State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Hello, I'm Diane Morgan. If you know who I am, you know who I am. If you don't, who cares? I'm here to explain Italian Time, a holiday phenomenon where Italians throw away their clocks and gather for eternity with San Pellegrino. I've been at this party so long that I've eaten 5 courses, hugged someone's grandma twice, and been offered a job in the family restaurant. So this holiday season, make sure to bring enough San Pellegrino to last you through the meal, the after meal, and the entire goodbye ritual. San Pellegrino, holiday on Italian Time.
Here's my 30-second story with Guinness. As soon as my sister and I get home for the holidays, we don't even unpack. We head straight to our pub. The bartender already knows our order, Guinness and fries. We laugh all night, catch up with old friends, and walk home with faces sore from smiling. It's one of my favorite nights of the year. That was my 30-second story with Guinness.
Guinness Draft Stout. Please enjoy responsibly. Imported by Diageo Beer Company, USA, New York, New York.
The Subaru Share the Love event is on from November 20th to January 2nd. During this event, Subaru donates to charities like Meals on Wheels, and so far has supported the delivery of nearly 5 million meals to our aging neighbors. When you purchase or lease a new vehicle during the 2025 Subaru Share the Love event, Subaru and its retailers will make a minimum $300 donation to charity. Visit Subaru.com/share to learn more.
Game's over. Time to check my fantasy scores.
You using a VPN?
Why?
Because using public Wi-Fi without a VPN is like leaving your wallet open on the table.
Oh. Time to up my defense.
McAfee Secure VPN keeps your personal information private and is included in all McAfee plans starting at just $39.99 for your first year. Sign up at McAfee.com/online protection.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 129 of DBR Bites, and we are breaking in because this is a special one. It's not quite an emergency one, but it kind of is. We got another one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. I got Jason Evans with me. Jason, another recruit for the program. His name is Deron Rippey. How excited are you?
I mean, I'm very, very excited. This is, as you're going to hear us talk about over the next half hour or so, this is a pretty special recruit. A, he's a top 15, one of the best players in the class, but B, perhaps more significantly, he's a type of player that Duke hasn't had a lot of in the past. Like the usual profile of a Jon Scheyer player is not exactly what Deron Rippey is. And I'm super excited to see him explore that under the tutelage of Jon Scheyer and Evan Bads and everybody else on that staff, because I think some really, really interesting things can come of it.
Well, at 6'2", Deron Rippey is the shortest guy ever been recruited by Jon Scheyer by 1 inch.
Actually, you're going to hear in a second. I think he's actually 6'1 and a half.
6'1 and a half, 6'2 with shoes on. He's listed as 6'2". Jared McCain was 6'3 when he arrived at Duke. So, Jared, you're off the hook. You're not the shortest guy that Jon has recruited to date thus far. It's now Deron Rippey. But Jason, the great thing about this is I think we mentioned on the last episode when we kind of talked about him, he went to Blair Academy. And if you guys go way back 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, we had an interview with the coach.
It was like 5 years. It was 2021.
COVID has shrunk everything by like 2 years.
Exactly.
But yes. If you recall, this has been a pipeline in the making, going all the way back to Luol Deng, Patrick Davidson, and then as Jason mentioned a few years ago, when Jalen Blake's committed, we talked to Coach Joe Mantegna of Blair Academy, and we got him back again because if you're going to talk about Blair Academy, how can we not do it without talking to one of the great coaches in all of American basketball? So here it is, quick interview with Joe Mantegna of Blair Academy about Deron Rippey Jr. committing to the Duke Blue Devils.
Look at you, man.
We're in the Holland Tunnel. Of what's more New York than being in the Holland Tunnel?
Exactly. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Happy to be back with you. It's always good when I'm back here. It's good for my high school team to be back on this podcast with you guys.
We enjoy it. So we like the pipeline we got going on here. So we really appreciate it.
As do I. I'm a much better coach when I have Duke recruits on my team. So yeah, I'm with you guys.
Love it.
Joe, let's get started. Let me ask you, were you at all surprised at Deron Rippey's announcement just a couple hours ago? You were at it, or did you think this kid's a Duke kid?
No, yeah. I mean, listen, he is a Duke kid. He's an academic kid. He's a high character kid. He's about brotherhood and unselfishness. So he's a great cultural fit for Duke and Duke basketball. But we wanted to make sure he had his full process, did a bunch of visits, and he felt good about that. I never pushed it in any way, even though we've had a bunch of guys play at Duke.
Talk about his game, if you would, for a second. What exactly is Duke getting? Because I'll tell you that I see the kind of athleticism, explosiveness in a point guard that Duke hasn't had a lot of. Duke has had some great point guards, but not exactly in this mold, at least not recently.
Yeah, I think he's a little different than the guys you guys have had before. I think he's a little shiftier, a little more wiggle. He can really get it from foul line to foul line. He can really put it ahead. And then obviously he can finish above the rim and transition. So, yeah, I do think he's in a little different mold. And I think when plays break down, he's a system guy, but when plays break down, he can really get to the rim and ISOs, get to the rim off of ball screens.
Coach, I want to talk about his game. You mentioned how far it's come along. He's really started to stand out amongst his peers. He's become arguably the best true point guard in his class. What part of his game over the last year or so do you think has elevated the most to get him to this point?
Well, I think his shooting has improved every year of his development. And so obviously, as you guys know, when you have a shifty, wiggle, athletic point guard, when, in his early years at Blair and even on the AAU circuit, people would go under ball screens and kind of make him shoot. And so you're limited when people can play you like that. And, he's just been in the gym working on his craft. And now that he's shooting the ball at almost a 40% clip from three, the option to kind of go under ball screens and to slough off them is just not there for people. So I would say that's the piece that has taken him to the next level. And then, he's gotten bigger, faster, stronger, like most high school kids does, but he's done a great job in the weight room. He's done a great job with his physicality. So, people also, when he was younger, of course, 14, 15 years old, would body him sometimes. And, now it's harder to do that to him.
I want to take a step back further. We, just as you were coming on, we were kind of talking about the pipeline that we've kind of created here between Blair Academy and Duke, and we really love it. But also, since the last time we talked to you, when Jalen Blakes had committed to Duke, the recruitment process has changed significantly with NIL and transferring and all of this stuff. How has your role as a head, high school coach changed with regards to helping one of your players like Rippey decide where to play in college?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Jalen Blakes just texted me about 10 minutes ago. He's so happy that Ron is going to Duke. So that's first of all. No, everything has changed. And I'm 56 years old. And you have to decide at my age if you're going to adapt or if you're going to get away from it and perish, because everything has changed. The conversations, the perfectly legal conversations I'm having on the phone with various general managers and head coaches, could have been an FBI probe 20 years ago. So, everything is different now. And, we've decided to lean into it and learn and humbly try to figure out this new world and navigate it so that, we can support guys like Ron and some of the other guys. We have 5 Division I signees on our team this year. So, I've had to learn how to support all of them through this process, and it's ever changing. And, we're just trying to go at it with humility and so that we can be supportive of our guys. But yes, you couldn't be more different than Luol Deng's recruitment 20 years ago to Duke 25 years ago.
Hey, Coach, one of the things that people talk about so much with Deron is the defense, that he's able to use his athleticism, his length to be so disruptive. Talk about the way that you've been able to exploit that at the high school level and how that will translate to the next level. Because look, the big question for any of these kids, it's one thing to do it against high schoolers. It's a whole different thing to do it against semi-professional or professional players in college basketball.
Well, I mean, first of all, we play a national schedule, so we're a prep school team. So we play guys with fifth years, and we play 19, 20-year-old guys a lot. We play teams with 6, 7, 8 Division I guys on it. So our level is completely different, even from, elite high school basketball, where there might be a couple of D1 guys on the floor. Most of our games will have, between two teams, 5 to 10, sometimes 15 D1 guys. So that's first thing. But no, in terms of his defense, listen, he's got a really high motor. He's a really competitive kid. A lot of kids are as talented as he is at the high school level. They don't have to guard, or they're not demanded to guard, or they're so talented they can just overwhelm people. That's not the case with Ron. He plays defense. He takes pride in his defense. He's a New York City guard. He likes to pressure the ball. And I've told Coach Scheyer, I actually think, I think he has a lot of room to grow fundamentally, defensively. Like, I don't even think you guys have seen the half of what he's going to be defensively when he kind of locks in on some of the details. He's so athletic that times he can gamble and kind of shoot gaps and do some of those things that he won't be able to do at Duke. And obviously that's why we want him coached by a guy like Jon. So, they'll get the details right.
Last question for me, Coach. What's next for Deron Rippey? As we move forward, now that he's committed, and surely you'll be talking a little bit more with the coaching staff about how they've planned to use him next year. How does that work into your plans for Blair Academy? Because obviously you have your own job to do in helping them win against, like you said, one of the best schedules in the country.
Yeah, listen, we try to play a college style. We play a lot of 5-out. We play with great pace. We're averaging 91 points a game. So, we play with wide spacing like Duke does, and we play mostly man-to-man. And by no means are we Duke by any means, but, we're trying to get guys ready for high-level college basketball here. So what we're doing every summer is digging into the best EuroLeague teams, the best NBA teams, the best college teams, and trying to steal concepts. We're talking to people to try to know what we need to do with these guys when they're sophomores and juniors, so that, our terminology is similar, our style of play is similar, so that when they get there and they're 1 and done or 2 and done or 4-year guys, that the transition is quicker because the vocabulary is the same, or at least similar. The demands are the same, or at least similar. I'm not going to ask them how we need to play him differently, because, he only has 3 months left in his career here, and he's been with us here for 4 years. But we're very cognizant in our individual development and our team development of getting these guys ready for this level, Deron and all of his teammates.
Hey, Joe, last question now. You mentioned the notion of 1 and done, 2 and done. Do guys stay a while? When we spoke to you about Jalen Blakes a few years ago, you told us at the time Duke fans are going to be surprised what this guy develops into, and he's going to develop into someone who's a major impact on the program. And you were 100% right about that. And what an incredible player Jalen Blakes became over his time at Duke and then at Stanford. Do you think Deron Rippey is a likely 1 and done kind of prospect? Or do you think this is someone who maybe takes a little more time in college to develop his skills? Or is that impossible to project?
Listen, I mean, I'm old enough to know you don't want to put that on a kid, right? We talk to these guys about being where their feet are and pouring into their development where they are. If he starts to skip steps or starts to think about the NBA when he's at Duke, he's going to do a disservice to Duke. I don't know if he's 1 and done. I don't know if he's 2. I know that if you're 6'1.5", irrespective of his 40-inch vertical and his quick twitch, you got to be pretty special to play in the NBA at his size. And so we talked to him about his in-between game. We talked to him about his ball pressure. We talked to him about being patient, about, enjoy Duke, pour into Duke, let yourself be coached at Duke. If you're 1, if you're 2, if you're 4, who knows? But be where your feet are. And he's that way. He's a very poised young man. He's not skipping steps. He knows he's still got stuff to work on. We're not telling him how great he is every day. We're challenging him to be better every day. And that's why, going to Jon Scheyer and his staff, we know they're going to do the same thing as well. And that's why, I can't project that. I'm rooting for this young man to be playing on an NBA roster soon, but the bottom line is go there and get coached by them and try to win a national championship.
Coach Joe Mantegna of Blair Academy, it is A pleasure to have you on under these wonderful circumstances again. You keep on producing the great players. We'll keep on bringing them to Duke. How about that?
Hey, fellas, it sounds good. I'm down. I'll talk to you in a couple years, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly. Have fun navigating the Holland Tunnel. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
You got it. Be well, fellas.
Take it easy. All right. That was a great interview. Jason, from start to finish, the fact that he did this from the Holland Tunnel is an absolute miracle in itself. If anybody has done the Holland Tunnel or the Lincoln Tunnel, you already know. And he was in that thing for the whole time. I know it's a little after 6 p.m. on the East Coast, so you know there's traffic. It doesn't matter that we're a couple days away from the start of the new year. But Jason, your thoughts on Coach Joe and his belief in Deron Rippey?
Man, that was a great interview. I think we got a lot of insight into the kind of person that Deron is. We got a lot of insight into his game and how it's going to, how Coach Joe thinks it's going to develop. And I could not be more excited for someone like this. Donald, we're going to get into exactly who he is, scouting reports and stats and all that other kind of stuff in a minute. But I thought Coach Joe just gave us so much insight into who Deron Rippey is as a player. I loved especially the last question I asked him, is this kid one and done? And he was like, I'm not putting that on the kid. And that's not who Deron is. Deron is where his feet are at that moment. He's not looking someplace else. And he knows he has to continue to work to get better. The fact that this kid is someone who's moved up in the recruiting rankings, the fact that he is someone who's developed his game and improved his game. We're going to talk about this. Someone who has improved aspects of his game every single year. Like, it'd be real easy to just for him to think like, I'm the best athlete on the, because believe me, every time he steps on the floor, he's the best athlete on the floor. Mm-hmm. Even in college, most of the time, probably almost every game, he's going to be the best athlete on the floor. May depend on whether Jordan Smith Jr. commits to Duke, but regardless, he could rely on that. There'd be plenty of guys who'd be like, I can jump higher than anyone around here. And that would be enough. And Deron Rippey's like, I can jump higher than anyone around here. And I'm going to work on everything else other than jumping because that's what's going to make me into a great player. So I feel like we got some of that insight from Coach Joe, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I asked him about the game, the part of his game that he thought it elevated the most, and he immediately went to shooting. And he talked about how, quite frankly, he wasn't a great shooter at the start of high school and how that has come along. And Jason, I think, you've talked about on the show, and we kind of have mentioned Deron Rippey over the past few episodes about the fact that the one part of his game that needs to, rise a little bit will be his shooting. And so the fact that he's working on that, and you could tell, both you and I watched the announcement on CBS Sports, and you could just tell he's a grounded human being. He had his whole family there with him. He mentioned all the work that he had put in to get to this moment, and that work was not yet done. And so it's funny because a lot of people signify declaring for college as like the end of your high school career of sorts, and for some players it is. Like some players, they kind of like don't really take the senior year seriously, but this guy feels like he has work left to be done. And the funny thing is, when you're 6'1.5", as Coach Joe affectionately put it, sometimes you play with a chip on your shoulder. Like, thinking back to me, like Allen Iverson, who he's not 6 foot, he's not 5'11", he probably isn't 5'10". Like that man is 5'9" with stilts on, and he had the heart of a warrior. And he had that kind of game where every time he stepped on the floor, he felt he had to prove himself, even though he did not have to do that in our eyes. But he played like that. And I think a guy like Deron Rippey stepping onto the floor where, again, he's the shortest guy on a lot of these floors. And as the game of basketball trends taller, because that's what NBA scouts are looking for, he's going to have that kind of chip on his shoulder to be able to work on his game, to improve, and to show that, yes, even though I'm 6'1.5", soaking wet, I have the ability to hang with these guys that are taller than me. And I think that's going to be something I'm looking forward to seeing in college.
Let me do this. I want to talk very briefly. You mentioned the announcement. I want to talk very briefly about the announcement. Then I want to get into a little bit of the scouting stuff that I'm not the world's greatest scout by any stretch of the imagination. I will freely admit that I've never seen Deron Rippey play in person, But I've watched a bit of tape. I've done a bit of reading. I've talked to people who know things, and we're going to get into all that. But first, that announcement, it was really touching to me. This kid almost started crying. You heard his voice breaking up. You heard him getting very, very emotional, talking about the fact that he was about to pick from some of the top basketball programs in the country. Everybody, every big blue blood was after Deron Rippey. He is, as we've mentioned, 6'1.5", 6'2", about 175, 180 pounds, reported to have about a 6'6" wingspan and a 40-inch vertical, kind of crazy athletic kind of stuff. So everybody wanted him. But thinking about those schools and thinking about the chance that he had made him get emotional. And that's really, really beautiful. And then he pulled out that Brotherhood jacket. Donald.
That everybody on stage got. We weren't on stage, ladies and gentlemen, so we didn't get one. But if somebody has an extra jacket, dbrpodcast@gmail.com, would love to try it on, just see if it fits.
The Duke program, by the way, is very protective of all the Brotherhood gear. Like you can get stuff that says DUKE. It is really hard. It is really hard to get stuff that has that Brotherhood word written on it. They are very protective of that. So the fact that they sent that custom stuff out to him and his family, yeah, that was pretty great stuff. Okay, let me get to who he is. Let me describe his game. As you can tell, elite athlete. He's really unlike anyone Jon Scheyer has ever had at the point guard. And frankly, he's unlike anyone Duke has had at the point guard since probably Trevon Duval, who, if you will remember, would just yam on people in disgusting kind of ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I know.
Like, as a point guard, too, right? Like, not like a Cassius Stanley, was just like, don't give me the ball to dribble. If you give me the ball, I'm taking flight. I think he might have had 11 dribbles in his entire career, it felt like, because every time he got the ball, he was going north. But Trevon Duval would sit there and say, hey, if there's not a lane for me to dunk, I have the handle to create one. And that he did very many times.
Yeah. As for Deron Rippey, the word that people use is explosive. You hear that again and again and again. He gets into the lane. He creates opportunities for himself and for his teammates. He's someone who absolutely looks to pass to his teammates if they are more open than he is. But if they're not more open than he is quite good at finishing in the lane, using his length, using his explosive ability, using that that incredible vertical leap to get up there close to the basket. He has highlight reel after highlight reel full of absurd dunks, block shots where he just keeps on going up. Like he jumps and you're like, oh, he's reached the top. Oh no, never mind. He's going even higher. He has a sick hezzy move. He knows how to put head and shoulder fakes on guys. He has really, really great handle with the ball in his hands. He makes defenders just look silly at times. I mean, he's the kind of guy who will, have a guy spinning around quite literally trying to figure out how to stay with him. On the 3 SSB, which is the Adidas AAU circuit, there are 2 major AAU circuits every summer. There's 3 SSB and there's Nike EYBL. He was on the Adidas circuit, and he led that circuit in assists with better than 6 assists per game. He averaged more than 15 points per game, 3.6 rebounds per game, and get ready for a big number, 2.9 steals per game. Ooh, boy.
I love that.
Ooh, boy. He was named to the all-defensive team on the 3 SSB circuit. He was named first team all-tournament on the circuit. He's considered by many to be the best defensive point guard in high school basketball. Relentless in his ball pressure. He forces opposing guards into making mistakes, puts them in difficult situations, forces the ball out of their hands and into the hands of guys who aren't as comfortable running the offense. That is what Deron Rippey is going to bring to you. And by the way, I mentioned he was on the all-defensive team. He did not win the defensive MVP of the 3 SSB circuit. The defensive MVP was Cameron Williams, who will be his teammate at Duke next year. Duke is arguably getting the best defensive big man and perhaps the best defensive guard, certainly the best defensive point guard in all of high school basketball coming to play for us next year. Now, the book on Deron Rippey was this: all this athleticism, all this defense, all this handle, not a good shooter. That book, Donald, is being rewritten. Starting over this past summer on the 3 SSB Adidas circuit, he hit a pretty good 34-35% from 3 in AAU play. We heard Coach Joe just a moment ago tell us He's hitting 40% in his high school play. People who've been watching him at these big-time tournaments that Blair Academy is playing in, they say, yeah, this dude is really a legit three-point threat now, and he does it off of pull-ups. You know, it's not just like pass to me on the wing, because he's the guy with the ball in his hands. You slough off of him. If you try and go under the screen, he's just going to pull up and take that three-pointer in your face. He's also, by the way, developed a really nice mid-range game. He can stop and pop when he gets in the lane and hit that at a high percentage. This is a guy who was like top 30 in his class a year ago and has moved up in the rankings because of that better shot, because his offense has gotten better to match his already incredible defense. And he's now seen as right around the top 10, maybe a touch outside of it. Depends on, you know, which ranking service you're looking at. But all the numbers on this dude, all the tape, it all looks like an elite point guard on his way to Durham. I just can't wait.
And he was Gatorade Player of the Year for New Jersey last year, which is one of the toughest states to get Gatorade Player of the Year in. The ball knowers and the ball players there are immaculate. And so the fact that he has stood out amongst his state and really the country is awesome. And we're looking forward to having him in Durham. He obviously has to get through his season with Blair Academy, but he will join Cameron Williams, Bryce Howard, and Maxime Meyer as recruits coming out of the high school class of 2026. And Duke's not done. As you mentioned, they're still recruiting some guys, but you know, for all intents and purposes, those four right now, the top class in the country, according to 247 Sports.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more on Deron Rippey. I want to talk a little bit about his fit at Duke next year, but you know what? You're in charge. You're hosting, but
you want me to break?
Let's take a break.
Let's breathe.
I want to talk about how he fits with what Duke's going to have next year, and we also want to talk a little bit about you know, the craziness that is the NCAA and eligibility and all that other stuff. We're going to get back into that as well.
Yeah, it's funny because we talked about the NCAA stuff just on the last episode, just in the last day, and really for us over the last hour, there has been a major update from the president of the NCAA himself. So let's take a break. We'll talk about more Deron Rippey, and then we'll get into the NCAA stuff. So stick around.
Rated E for everyone. Includes in-game purchases. Includes random items. EA Sports FC 26 is here. Play your way this holiday season with an overhauled gameplay experience powered by community feedback. Enjoy festive upgrades in Ultimate Team with winter wildcards. Take on holiday-themed challenges and manage your career, like navigating the busy Christmas period. And team up with friends and clubs with new tournaments and live events. The club is yours. Give the gift of football with EA Sports FC 26.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Oh, Hilton stay, your beds are soft and cozy. No lumpy couch, no stiff futon, no shower line at crack of dawn. Oh, Hilton stay, a holiday you're saving.
When you want holiday comfort you can count on, it matters where you stay. This season, enjoy spacious, comfortable rooms and friendly service when you book with Hilton instead. Hilton for the stay.
10 years from today, Lisa Schneider will trade in her office job to become the leader of a pack of dogs. As the owner of her own dog rescue, that is. A second act made possible by the reskilling courses Lisa's taking now with AARP to help make sure her income lives as long as she does. And she can finally run with the big dogs. And the small dogs, who just think they're big dogs. That's why the younger you are, the more you need AARP. Learn more at aarp.org/skills.
Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause. It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy, red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives? Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
All right, we're back. As we mentioned before the break, we have some news, an update on the craziness that is recruiting in the NCAA, straight from the NCAA president himself. But before we do that, Jason, you want to talk more about Deron Rippey and his fit at Duke. I mentioned he's coming into this with this class of Cameron Williams, Bryce Howard, and Maxime Meyer. Again, they might be done there, but there's also guys they're going after in this class. And then, of course, there's the transfer portal once the season is done. But talk about, as of right now, what this means for Duke. Because as of right now, we do have 2 point guards in Cade Boozer and Caleb Foster. We have a plethora of wings. Obviously, we have one guy that we think we expect to be in the top 2, 3, if not the number 1 pick in next year's draft, in Cameron Boozer. But talk about Deron Rippey and how he fits in all of that.
Yeah, so I think the situation is this. I think you separate bigs from guards and wings, of course. So currently, Duke has 6 guys playing guard or wing for them. It's as you mentioned, Caden and Caleb, Isaiah Evans, Darren Harris, Nick Hemenia, and Dame Sarr. Those guys have formed a really nice rotation. Everyone is getting chances. Everyone seems happy. So 6 seems to be a good number. So let's look at Duke next year and count to 6. I think there is a very, very good chance. I don't know anything for certain. I'm not saying guys have made decisions, but I think there's a very good chance that Isaiah Evans and Dame Sarr will both be gone after this season, that they will move on to the NBA. That would be 2 openings in the 6 guard and wings. And we've now brought in Bryson Howard and Deron Rippey to replace them. If the other 4 guys are back, we have added 2 more, and 4 + 2 = 6, and everything seems to fit just nicely. I know that people are going to kind of say, wait a second, Caleb and Caden are both point guards. Deron Rippey's a point guard. How do they fit? Well, Duke has played multiple point guards together a lot. They're doing it this season. There are plenty of times this year where Caden and Caleb are on the floor together. Go back to one of the best Duke teams of all time in 2001. Duke played Jay Williams and
Chris Duhon.
God, I could not get his name out. Thank you. And Chris Duhon together were clearly 2 point guards. Duke had no trouble with that. So I don't think that having the multiple point guards is something that we need to worry about too much. But I will say this. There's another guy in this class, Jordan Smith Jr., who is the number 2 player in the class. A lot of people say he would be the centerpiece, that he is the one, big time, absolutely elite, can build your team around him kind of player that Duke is after in this current class. And if you add him, well, that's 7. And suddenly the numbers get a lot more difficult. And I'm not going to go ahead and speculate on who, maybe leaves or what happens. But I do think that if Duke adds Jordan Smith Jr., that there will be one more guy who leaves. And again, I don't know how you figure out what it is. All these guys will discuss this with Jon Scheyer when the season's over. It may be that Jon Scheyer already has a good inkling of who that guy is. There may be multiple guys who are thinking about it. There's just a lot to consider there. But I think the fit right now makes perfect sense. And then if we add Jordan Smith Jr., then we have to think about maybe there's one other guy that finds someplace else, or all these guys go out there and they battle and see, it's a battle royale to see who gets these 6 rotation pieces, because I don't think there's 7 rotation pieces in the backcourt.
And I'm not sure that you mentioned him, but also we have Sebastian Wilkins, who's redshirting this year, who's expected to be around next year. Yeah, but I don't consider
he's not a wing. He's gonna. I'm pretty sure that what you're going to see next year from Seabass is he'll be backing up Cameron Williams at power forward,
more the front court. Yeah. But again, that's another I guess piece to this puzzle that thankfully is not you or I's job to figure out. We just get to speculate and opine and be like, we should go this way, go that way. It's up to Jon Scheyer, the coaching staff, to actually put that together. And we have full faith and credit in them because they've done it quite well so far. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that works. Jason, before we get out of here, let's move on to the update of news that we got just like, again, an hour ago from the head of the NCAA, Charlie Baker. And he posted on Twitter, on social media, about the fact we had talked about Trayton Flowers, who is with a two-way player for the Chicago Bulls that's getting interest from from schools on basically leaving the NBA, leaving the G League, and coming back to college to play. Or I'm sorry, not coming back to college, but just come to college to play college ball. We talked about James Nagy and the fact that he had been drafted to the NBA, but never played in the NBA. He stayed in Europe and is now playing at Baylor. And Charlie Baker, maybe put a rest to at least some of this. I'm just going to read a part of this quote that he had about everyone in the G League and the NBA who might want to come back and play the NCAA. He says, quote, "The NCAA has not and will not grant eligibility to any prospective or returning student athletes who have signed an NBA contract, including a two-way contract. As schools are increasingly recruiting individuals with international league experience, the NCAA is exercising discretion in applying the actual and necessary expenses bylaw to ensure that prospective student athletes with experience in American basketball leagues are not at a disadvantage compared to their international counterparts. Rules have long permitted schools to enroll and play individuals with no prior collegiate experience mid-year," end quote. So, Jason, I just want to talk about that for just a second, because I think what he's basically doing is what we kind of asked him to do the other day, which is draw a line in the sand and delineate what the NCAA is going to allow and what they're not going to allow. And at least as of this moment, he's saying that the NCAA will not allow a player who has signed an NBA contract, including a two-way contract, to come back or matriculate and compete in the NCAA. Now, the issue for that with a lot of people, the biggest question that's come out of that in the last hour is, what about James Nagy? He played in Summer League. Summer League requires you to sign a contract of some sort with the National Basketball Association. You don't just sign a contract with, McDonald's or some other entity to play in the Summer League. You sign with that particular team and thus with the NBA. And so far, with James Nagy, he has been approved by the NCAA to come and play at Baylor. And because he had not played in college, he got 4 years of eligibility from the NCAA to play in college. So he is a separate situation because of the national, but it's just going to, again, open up more questions about the American system of basketball versus how they do it international, where, as you mentioned, most players, there's no high school system set up the way that there is here. There's no college system set up the way that there is here. So in essence, this might be viewed as something that punishes American athletes for being American and playing in the American high school system. I don't know if that's something we want to get into, but your thoughts on Charlie Baker and at least drawing some sort of line in the sand about all this.
I definitely like the fact that Charlie Baker has said, here's the red line. The red line is, have you gotten an NBA paycheck? I agree that the James Nagy, the Summer League situation raises some real questions about whether that red line really exists and how you exactly delineate it, but at least like the Trenton Flowers situation, these other, we talked about Trevor Keels. At least those kind of situations we now have a clearer understanding of. And I think whether you agree with everything that's happening or not, at least now there is, an idea of what the limit is. Here is where you cannot go. And that's a good thing for college basketball because, now coaches having I don't want to call it a level playing field because it's with different NIL budgets, it's in no way a level playing field, but at least having an idea of what the playing field exists, who's in play, that is an important thing. And I appreciate Charlie Baker and the NCAA clarifying that a little bit. I'll tell you the other comment I have on all this, which is I don't think I've ever seen this much pushback, this much frustration from coaches, prominent, big name, big time coaches, as what we've seen over the past several days. We've talked about Tom Izzo and the comments that Tom Izzo is like, he's leading the way. John Calipari has been right there alongside him. John Calipari, like at every press conference he holds,
He had like a 10-minute. He had like a 10-minute. Someone asked the question, like you could ask John Calipari, "Hey, how's the weather today?" And he would like, "Let me talk for 10 minutes about this thing," and just went off. That's basically every press conference now for him.
Yeah. Look, in the wake of what Tom Izzo had to say about the James Najee situation at Baylor, Scott Drew, the Baylor coach, held a press conference to be like, "Let me explain to you what's going on with this guy." And they even did like a whole spread in The Athletic about exactly how Baylor had sort of recruited and gotten James Najee to come help out their program. I mean, this is like the central issue happening in college basketball right now. And I just want to read, there was a post on social media, and I want to read it to you, and then I'm going to tell you who said it, because I think it is a really, really telling commentary from a legend. Again, I'll read it first, then I'll tell you who said it. This guy said, "Everything that I'm reading from college coaches is great stuff, but what's not being said is that it's no longer college basketball. It is professional basketball with budgets that rival the EuroLeague. Pros have trade deadlines. The G League is way below college basketball on a pay scale. Even two-way players are way below college basketball on a pay scale. Unfortunately, the game that I've been in for over 40 years no longer exists." Again, he said, it's no longer college basketball. The person who said that was Rick Pitino, who's been around the professional game and the college game for a long, long, long time, and is a hell of a, say what you want about what you think about his ethics, say what you want about some of the things he's done over the course of his career. Dude can coach his butt off. For him to say, the game that I've been involved with, the game that I've loved, the game that I've been a part of for 40 years is now gone. I think that is a very, very telling statement.
It is, and I read that, and I even heard some of what he had to say about it. It is, but it isn't, right? It kind of, his argument kind of dives more into the debate that we don't want to have with people anymore because the toothpaste is out of the tube. Whether players should be paid, right? That's kind of where his argument kind of fits more under. But when you see some of the other ones, right? Like Calipari, again, he's talking, he makes a lot of sense. Tom Izzo makes a lot of sense. Danny Hurley, all these coaches who kind of snipe at each other, right? It's like the Bloods and Crips meme where they're just holding up the peace sign, like, oh, we're just going to join together against this. And it's clear that there was a line that they feel should not have been crossed. And even the fact that Scott Drew almost immediately had to come out and be like, wait, let me explain myself. Is again him kind of saying, hey, I'm not trying to be against what everyone here feels like they should be against. I'm with them, but again, this is the rule, and this is why we went about it this way to get it approved, and we wanted to see because this kid has a compelling story that we want to market in college, right? And he wants to play college ball. I think the idea, as I mentioned on the last show, the idea was we just talked about recruiting down into high school to get players to come to college. We've had recruiting laterally in the case of Dame Sarr. And James Najee and him were teammates, right? To go over to Europe and grab a guy and bring him over. That's like a lateral move. The question was, are they going to start allowing people to recruit up, going into the NBA, going into really the G League, but really the NBA, because that was the next step for Trent Flowers. Going up into the NBA and pulling a guy who has played NBA minutes, scored NBA points, and collected NBA checks, and say, hey, we can give you more money down here in college. The NCAA has said that is the line. You can recruit down and side to side, but you cannot look up. So I think at least that's a starting point. And the question, as I said last time, is will they stand on business with it? Will somebody try to, in the case of Jurassic Park, test the fences and see what they can do, what they can't do? How serious are they? Again, someone might bring up this summer league thing and say, okay, if summer league doesn't count, then what about, this other thing? I'm sure there was people who had questions about Man last year because he played in the Basketball After League, which is run by the NBA, right?
Yep.
Tyrese Proctor was at an NBA development program in Australia before he came to Duke. So even those were things that I'm sure Duke had to get clarification on and answer all questions and say, here's how we're trying to do this. And let's make sure when we go after these players, we're doing it in a way that keeps us above board. And that's great that they were able to do that. And I'm glad that they were able to do that because we got 2 great players out of it who are fan favorites. But this is the question that is going to happen next, is people are going to say, okay, what is inbounds and what is not? And the only way they're going to do that is by testing those fences. Let's get this player, see what the NCAA has to say. Let's get this other guy, let's see what the NCAA has to say about it. That's what we're going to see over the next, not necessarily few months, but definitely as we enter the end of the year, going into that transfer portal, going into next summer, you're going to see guys who, hey, like, you don't want to see college coaches sitting at Summer League scouting players, because right now the answer to that question is Summer League doesn't count, apparently. So that's what's next. And I'm sure the NCAA, again, Baker has said something, but he's got to get the rest of those guys into the room. And honestly, he's got to get Adam Silver into the room too, and the NBA Players Association too, to say, let's all figure this out together so that when this ruling comes in and we say, this is what we want to do, everybody's in alignment and nobody has any questions.
Yeah, look, the bottom line is this, Donald. Where we are right now and where we were 2 hours ago are different places, and that's a good thing. You will not hear me praising Charlie Baker very often on this podcast.
I'm not ready to do it yet because, again, as you know, I've heard this statement, this is the mantra, sound bites aren't always sworn testimony. Again, let's see if he backs up the words that he put out.
Yeah, I'm no fan of the NCAA and its leadership, but with everyone, and I mean everyone, screaming, we need clarification. We need to understand. The NCAA actually stepped up today and gave a little bit of clarification. So it's not a lot of applause. I'm not going to stand up and hoot and holler, but I'll give them a little tiny bit of clapping to say, thanks, guys, for figuring at least a little bit of this stuff out, because it's been a little too Wild West, even for my tastes.
I will say this is the fastest that the NCAA has moved in a very long time on behalf of something. Yeah. So let's see what will happen tomorrow, shall we? Oh, wait. Don't do anything tomorrow. Please, NCAA, don't do anything tomorrow. It's New Year's Eve. Duke football is playing. Duke basketball is playing. Let us get through that, and then maybe in the new year, you will hear from Jason and I again, and maybe the NCAA will have done something by then to address all of this. But until then, Deron Rippey is a Blue Devil. Jason and I are very excited about it. We're getting ready for a big day of Duke sports tomorrow as we close out 2025. We will see you in 2026. Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. Be safe, be well, and Duke Band, play us out and take us out.